everybody, Creative Katie Karen Burchill here. Welcome to my channel. Today, an art journal tutorial. I'm going to be using stamps and stencils and more. So this stamp is one of my newest to my stash and it's going to become a favorite. It's a Stamperia Words stamp and I am stamping with acrylic paint. I prefer that to ink in a lot of cases. I find it's more vivid, but you do have to make sure that you wash the stamps. Here I'm just applying the black acrylic to the stamp with a brayer, but you could just stamp onto the glass mat or your craft mat. And there I'm just cleaning it after. I love the larger style letters on this stamp, and I can see myself using this a lot. This is another new one. It's called Tiles Corner and it's a Woodware stamp, and links to these at NinnysNapkins can be found in the description box below. I love the rustic one, and the kind of vintage look of both of these, and I'm not trying to get a full-on stamp. You'll notice I'm lifting up corners. I don't want it perfect. This is just adding pattern to the background, breaking that blank page. I really needed to use some bright colors today, so I used bright yellow. This is quinacridone magenta. Now, when you're mixing paint wet on wet, you want to make sure that the colors that you put wet on wet will go together. So the blue and the pink I know are going to make purple. The pink and the yellow are going to make orange. The blue and the yellow are going to make green. But the green and the blue are fine, but the green and the pink might make mud, so I'm making sure that dries, or you put a barrier. Here I'm putting blue in between before I put the green, and that'll keep the colors that would make mud from making mud. Just as a reminder, this page was completely gessoed before I did any stamping. Just a reminder, I'm going to recap all the steps at the end of the video. Now I know going into this that my image is going to be primarily white, my focal image, and you're going to see that shortly. So that's why I chose a lot. I just wanted a lot of pattern and a lot of color in the background. So I'm going to use the stencil here and the same colors. Here's the quinacridone magenta and Fantangle stencil. And I'm just stamping. I'm just adding a little bit more pattern to the background. And I'm putting the quinacridone on the other parts, on the other colors, so that it shows up. I'm grabbing this stencil, this winged mosaic one, and I love the motif in the corner. A lot of this this one doesn't show at the end, but I'm using the turquoise paint here and putting it in places where the pink is showing or the yellow is showing. Now this stencil is called Gathered Flowers, also from TCW, and I'm just using that one part of it. Remember, when you get a stamp or a stencil, you get to choose what part or parts of it you're going to use, and you don't have to use it the way the artist or the designer has done it. There, I tried using another one and I just didn't like it. The Digistamp that I'm going to use as my main focal point had the word oopsie daisies, and so that is why I'm using this particular flower, because it looked most like daisies in my mind. And I just want to add some contrast, which is why I'm choosing white here. And of course, daisies for the most part are white. Putting some of them off the edge. And I'm loving how you can see the stamping that I did at the beginning. The letter stamp is coming through, the word stamp. Now here is the Digistamp, and this is from Elena Zinsky Art. And there are the sheep And then you can resize them to whatever size you want, big or small. And I've done several of that. I even cut out some of my own words there. What I'm using today is the size of the stamp that she created. Now here's what I'm talking about. I'm cutting off parts of this and editing it to fit what I want to do with it. I think these sheep are absolutely adorable. This I printed out on copy paper. My copy paper is about 24 pound. It's a little heavier than some, and it handles wet medium pretty well. So I find I don't need to do it on mixed media paper. So I'm cutting out the head because using the saying that she had here, whoopsie daisies, I thought, oh, I'm going to put some daisies and to make the body of the sheep. So as soon as I decided I'm doing daisies, I went through my stencils and my stamps and pulled out things and elements that work together, or I thought would work together. I didn't use all of them. Here I'm just bubble cutting the sentiment, and this again is straight up on Elena's digi stamp. Now I'm using this sentiment pack from the Crafters Workshop. It's called Precious Sentiment, and I'm using that daisy flower. So I'm stamping this with archival ink. I do try to stamp this with black acrylic paint, and this stamp is very fine, and so I wasn't getting as precise a stamp as I wanted to use on a focal image. So I ended up using the ones that I stamped with the archival ink. So then I had to spend a lot of time fussy cutting out these daisies. My plan here is to cover the sheep's body in these white daisies, layer them up. And yes, I cut out or I stamped out more than I need. And the leftovers, whether they're cut out or not, are just going to go in my stash. And they often sit on the table in a basket right close, and they're going to find their way on to a mini make or another art journal page. So are all of the daisies. And now I'm going to start gluing everything down. But I'm going to cut off these legs. Now, I could have just painted them on afterwards, but I thought I'm just going to cut it off and layer up these daisies, and then I'm going to glue them on. Lots of ways that you could end up at the same place. So I'm going to glue this body down. When I'm picking a digistamp or a stamp, I like to look at it and see how many ways can I use it? Do I have lots of ideas? I try to avoid buying stamps or digistamps that are kind of one of that you're only going to create what you with something once. I have tons of ideas for these digistamp, this set, and because you can shrink them or blow them up, I can use it on a multitude of surfaces. I'm going to be doing some on my 4x4 fridge magnets. So remember I cut out the head, so now I'm going to glue it on, and the benefit here is I can put this head wherever I want. So basically I've taken Elena's design and I'm tweaking it and making it my own. And we need to be able to do that with our stamps, with our stencils. So now I'm painting the legs because it was photocopied. It was a little dollar, and I really wanted that to be a bright black. I really wanted that contrast to be there. So I'm just adding paint. I'm using a liner brush. I've thinned the paint just a little bit. And I cut off the legs because I wanted the black part to be on top of the flowers. Otherwise, the flowers would have covered that up. Now, when I look at pictures of sheep, a lot of them, they have black faces. So I decided I'm going to paint this out black. So I'm losing again some of the detail from Elena's stamp, but I'm making it my own. But I love these big eyes on the face. As I said before, links to Elena's Etsy store, as well as NinnysNapkins and TCW and Amazon are found in the description box below. I love when I have a colorful background using a black and white focal image. And of course, the sheep is that color. This page took about 40 minutes from beginning to end, but it was a fairly quick page. Now, some of my letter stamp from this word stamp from Stamperia was pushed back, and I wanted to bring a little bit more of it up, so I'm just stamping with archival ink on top in the little selected places. And yes, it would have been easier had I done that before I put the sheep on. But why do something the easy way when you can do it the hard way? So I cut this flower off the Digi-Stamp, and now I decide I'm going to paint it the pink to match the pink that's in the background, and I'm going to give this sheep a little bit of a flower in her hair. So again, I'm changing the original art. I'm dotting the white part of the eye with my stylus and white acrylic paint and gluing with fluid matte medium. Making sure after every layer, you want to make sure everything's dry before you do anything else. Now I'm using the floating acrylic technique with my angle brush, and I'm shading around this sheep just to help it stand out a little bit from the background. You could use a Stabilo all pencil here. You could use a charcoal pencil. I like using the floating acrylic technique because it's permanent when it's dry. This page is 7 by 10 and it is from my Canson Mixed Media art journal. I've taken it off the coils because I love working on it on a flat surface. Keeps everything neat and tidy, and it makes life so much easier when you're creating, not to be creating on bulk. Now I'm using that floating acrylic technique and I'm edging my paper with the black. Again, that's tying in. Now that I've got the black on the face of the sheep and the stamping, just all working together. This is an Inktense pencil, and I am shade, just coloring in the center of the daisies with yellow. Then I come in with a burnt orange to shade it. Now, Inktense is ink, and once you activate it, it then becomes permanent. Now remember, I glued down all those daisies with the matte medium. That turned it into a non-porous surface. So if I make a mistake here, I can wipe it off with a baby wipe a little bit. Here I'm just activating it with a brush. You can use a water brush. I just keep it simple. I just use my regular brush and I dip it in the water. I first put just the yellow in here, and then I decided that it needed something more, so I came back with kind of the burnt orange color. The Inktense pencils or blocks, you could get either or, are fairly expensive, but they are vivid colors. They are permanent when they're activated, and there are lots of ways you can use them in mixed media and art journaling. And I have a series of videos showing that. You can find that playlist. So I decided I wanted some smaller daisies on the background. So I'm taping off one little motif on that same gathered flowers stencil, and then just coming in and stenciling with the white. A couple tries to get a clear. Some going off the page. I just love how this page turned out. The bright colors with the contrasting of the white. And now I'm adding black, and I'm using this stencil. It's called Dash V, or this part of it. I'm taping off part of it, and I'm using the stencil to create a border. And I'm going to put that on the top and the bottom. And again, because I'm adding the black, adding black and white to whatever page you have gives you contrast. So look at your stencils and look at them in a different way and see which one can I turn into. Sometimes all you have to do is tape off a part of it and then you can use it to create an interesting border. Just adding a little bit more edging on the sides now that I've decided not to put that same border on the sides. Now it's time to glue down the sentiment, and this came with the DigiKit, the DigiStamp. And really inspired my thinking. It inspired what I was going to end up doing with this page. I'm pulling off the tape. Now I have a nice clean edge there. Oh, I hope you love this page as much as I do. It just makes me smile. Elena's carrot lamb is just too cute. So let's do the recap. I started by stamping with black acrylic paint, using my newest Stamperia stamp, Words, and the Tiles Corner stamp. That was to break the page, but I'm so thrilled that some of that is showing through because I love it. Then I applied color, block, and blend. I added contrast with white by stenciling on the white. I use a digital download for the focal image, and I combined it with other stamps. So when you've got small stamps, think about how you can combine them for your focal image. I shaded around the sheep to make it stand out, and I bubble cut around the sentiment and glued it down to the page. I edged the page, and I used a stencil to create an interesting border. Then I added a little bit of stamping. Thanks so much for joining me. Give me a thumbs up, ask me a question. Until next time, go get creative.